Hello Horror Hounds. I want to do something just slightly different today. I've talked about books in the past. There's a video you'll find talking about Robert Bloch's Psycho books. Did you know he wrote 3 Psycho books? No? Check out the video. I've talked about David Cronenberg's first novel, Consumed. There's a video on that. Clive Barker's latest novel, The Scarlet Gospels. There's a video on that. But today we dip our toe into the water of novelisations with Hank Searls' novelisations of Jaws 2 and Jaws the Revenge. I've got a soft spot for novelisations for a couple of reasons. When done well, they can actually flesh out a fairly paper thin script. Sometimes an author will have some really good fun with it. Also, because these need to be bashed out, quite often the authors will get given an earlier draft of a film script, so they won't be writing novelisations necessarily of the shooting script. They'll be writing from early drafts. These are no exception. Obviously, the master of novelisations, to my mind, is Alan Dean Foster. Think of any film, and he's probably written a novelisation of it. But Hank Searls, we're here to celebrate today, and there's no novelisation of Jaws 3 at all. The interesting thing about both of these books is that not only are they novelisations of early drafts of both of these films, so they give you an insight into what the films were going to be, they're also very, very explicitly direct sequels to Peter Benchley's novel Jaws that the Spielberg movie's based on. Both of these reference things that happen in Peter Benchley's book that didn't make it into Spielberg's film. They both make reference to Ellen Brody's affair with Matt Hooper, which always rankled me. I saw the film first and read the book second. And Jaws is the greatest film ever made. I make no bones about that. So even though it's an adaptation of Peter Benchley's work, the differences that Peter Benchley has with the Spielberg movie, I don't particularly like. But there's a mafia subplot in Peter Benchley's book. Larry Vaughan, the mayor, has a real estate business, and he has sort of links with the mafia are trying to get their tentacles into real estate on Amity. So Brody's attempts to close the beaches aren't just hurting the summer dollars. We're a summer town. We need summer dollars. It's hurting the potential investment of the New York mafia families. That carries over into these as well. There's a mafia subplot in this, and there's an organised crime subplot in this that work better and worse. Shall we move from the ridiculous to the sublime? And we will start with Jaws the Revenge. And the old adage that you can't polish a turd, but you can add voodoo, because there's a couple of lines in Jaws the Revenge. An awful movie. One is where Michael says to his mum, Ellen Brody, "Sharks don't commit murder. You can't believe in that voodoo." And there's another line where Michael again asks Hoagie, the Michael Caine character who's got the private plane charter, "What do you do when you're not ferrying people around?" And Hoagie says, "I carry laundry." Both of those are explained. Let's do the laundry bit first. Hoagie is his motivations on the Bahamian island are explored in much greater detail. There's drugs on the island. There's organised crime on the island, and there's the suspicion that Hoagie is a drugs runner in competition with Ricky Lomas, is it? Who runs the drugs out of the island, and they want him dead. He's muscling in on their territory. Hoagie's a much shadier character in this. He's got much more interesting motivation in it. Well, he's got stuff to do other than fly a plane and emerge from the water completely dry like Michael Caine does. Maybe he had a heart attack. There's a lot of cholesterol in planes. I don't know why I just did Michael Caine as from New Zealand. let's move on. The motivation of the shark is explored in this. The reason the shark is killing off the Brody family in this is because essentially it's been placed under a voodoo curse. Michael Brody on the island has made enemies with a voodoo priest, Papa Jacques. I swear I'm not making this up. He broke Papa Jacques' magical gourd, and Papa Jacques is now wanting revenge on Michael Brody and the extended Brody family. He calls upon his loa, who takes the form of an enormous great white shark that already killed Sean Brody. And the end is really... By the end of it, Papa Jacques seems to have this weird voodoo connection with the shark. So as the shark dies, he dies. Hank Searls tries his absolute best to make this work. He doesn't quite succeed. I mean, he has Papa Jacques and various people on the island believing in voodoo, but suggests other natural reasons for the behaviour of the shark, but really kind of tips over into, right now in the Jaws universe, voodoo actually exists, it's real, and yes, the revenge of the title is Papa Jacques' revenge, actually, not the sharks, but all of that was completely stripped out of the movie. I understand why, it's fucking ridiculous. Hank Searls seems to kind of lose the will with this, in an attempt to try and get it as close to 300 pages. No, he just nudges over 300 pages. He does include a couple of fairly lengthy flashback sequences in this. Not Jaws the Revenge, the movie, has famous flashback sequences where Ellen Brody is remembering things that she wasn't there to witness. For example, just essentially to get Roy Scheider in the movie in sepia-toned flashback. At least in this, characters have flashbacks to moments that they were actually there for. They're both moments from his novel Jaws 2. So Ellen remembers a time when she punished Sean, and Mike remembers a time when he had an argument with his dad, Martin Brody. It does afford him the opportunity to reuse two sizable chunks from a previous book to just try and get through what must have been an awful writing. This is fun, but it in no way, it doesn't improve upon Jaws the Revenge. You can't do that. But if you're intrigued by the notion of the movie Jaws the Revenge plus some voodoo, that's fine. It's pretty bloodless, like the film is pretty bloodless. He does include a chapter where the shark is on its way off the coast of Amity to the Bahamas, where he comes across some sort of skeezy businessman who's got a bit of a drink problem, who's doing some deep sea fishing. And you think, oh, he's adding an extra kill. Excellent, to keep the kill count up. But no, that doesn't happen. What happens essentially, and you'll have to take my word for this if you're not prepared to read the book, the shark cures the businessman of his drink problem and then makes his way to the Bahamas. Don't shoot the messenger. Let's move on to Jaws 2, this is superb. This is an excellent... If you like Jaws 2, I like Jaws 2. This is so much better. If you want a really good sequel to Jaws, you have to read this book. You'll see on the front here, a completely new novel by Hank Searls based on a screenplay by Howard Sackler and Dorothy Tristan, inspired by Peter Benchley's Jaws. Now, the Howard Sackler, Dorothy Tristan script that he's basing this off is not the final script. Is not the Jaws 2 that we see the movie of. There are so many elements from this that get sort of pared down. This is so not a teenager-driven story. The day trip in the movie Jaws 2 is essentially an annual boat race for the kids, for the scouts in this. That race doesn't even start until 20 pages before the end of the novel. So the kids out on the boat is absolutely not the focus of this novel. Let me just have a quick look at my little notes here. In the earlier script, Amity was facing an economic downturn, but was in real trouble because of the events of the first book, the first movie. And there's a proposed casino, and there's mafia connections to that. The real big difference is that the photograph that gets taken, Brody doesn't see it in this. The pharmacist who develops the photo keeps it for blackmail material. He thinks that Mayor Vaughan and Brody lied about killing the shark, and the shark's still there. He wants it as leverage on the alderman of the town. So Brody's left kind of clueless in this. All the pieces start adding up for him, and there's even one point where he said if he didn't know for a fact that the shark was dead, he'd assume that the shark had returned. I can kind of see why that wouldn't work in a film. You don't really want to see Roy Scheider as Martin Brody being completely clueless right up until the last 15 minutes of the movie. It would have us without some of the classic Brody scenes in Jaws 2 that I really love. But what this novel does, what it's able to do, because it's not reliant on a model shark that may or may not work, it uses your imagination so well. If you've seen Jaws and you're at all terrified by the idea of a creature just yanking you down into the depths, of just a huge beast, just the idea that as soon as you go into the ocean, you're in a realm that you're really not supposed to be trespassing in, and that trespass can be punished by the apex predator of the sea. I am not ashamed to admit this book on numerous occasions scared me. That notion, the born purely from Jaws, that terror of just being snatched, dragged under, is played out in this novel so many times. There were times when I promise you, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that my blood ran cold. At times it reaches what I would describe as Lovecraftian, just cosmic terror, just because this ancient, honed by evolution creature is a little like the sort of sheer natural or unnatural terror of the great old ones. This will scare you. If Jaws scared you and you think that the other sequels are nonsense and you're looking for that frisson again, I promise you'll find it in Jaws 2. An excellent novelisation. Hank Searls was cashing a cheque for this one. I don't blame him, because this is probably even better than Peter Benchley's novel. I really rate Peter Benchley's Jaws. Spielberg's film is a fucking masterpiece. This is the true successor to that. If you want to get a little glimpse of what Jaws 2 could have been, possibly should have been, although I understand why they made some structural changes, Brody has to be more of a protagonist. He has to have more agency, which they give him in the film that he doesn't have in this. But this on a terror level, this is the true sequel to Steven Spielberg's Jaws. I cannot recommend it highly enough. And this is Sharks with Voodoo. It's absolutely nonsense, but it's fun. It's fun. Jaws 2, Hank Searls' Jaws 2. Read it. Check it out. It will scare you.